Hi, I'm Danny Lipford.
And I'm Chelsea Lipford-Wolf.
Thanks for watching this episode of Today's Homeowner here on YouTube. And don't forget to leave us a like and a comment.
And be sure to share with a friend, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you get notified of new videos.
Thanks and enjoy the show. Now this is one ugly deck, but we're about to change that.
Welcome to Today's Homeowner with Danny Lipford. Get ready for a half hour full of projects, tips, and ideas to help you improve your home.
Hey, I'm glad you joined us this week. You know, a wood deck area like this is perfect for entertaining, but it can cost as much as $10,000 to $15,000. So it only makes sense to protect that investment by maintaining your deck. Well, obviously, these homeowners have it. A lot of rotten wood around the perimeter of this deck and a very dirty deck surface. Well, this week we'll share with you some tips on how to make these repairs and how to clean and properly seal a wood deck like this so that it lasts as long as it should. And we'll show you an alternative for wood, and that's composite decking. So don't go anywhere. We're about to get real busy. Welcome back to the show. Now the first step in repairing this deck is to determine just how much wood we're going to have to replace. That way when Greg, who's helping me out on this job, and I go to the home center, we'll know exactly how much treated wood we'll need. Now we're using treated wood for all the repairs so that hopefully they'll never have to do this one again. Now first step, remove all the rotten wood, take care of a few other little simple repairs before we start the cleaning process. The 2x6 railing cap seems to be where most of the rotten wood is, so we're prying all of them up and removing them. Now all of the rail caps aren't rotten, but we're replacing all of them to keep the new looking wood continuous around the top of the deck. Now any nails that are left behind are pulled, and when there's no head on the nail, a pair of tongue and groove pliers works great to clamp onto the nail and roll it out of the wood. Now, some warping has occurred on the built-in bench boards, so I'm prying them back into position while Greg then nails them in place. Now the supports for the bench have sagged some, so this time Greg pries up on them to the right level with a piece of 2x6 while I re-nail the supports to the railings. Now we work our way around the deck, getting the whole bench leveled out. Now a few more well-positioned nails and we're ready to replace the rail cap. We measure each rail section and cut new 2x6s to nail in place on top of them. Now keeping the overhang consistent at exactly a 1/4 inch. The corners are then cut at 45-degree angles and both boards are set in place and aligned before they're nailed. Now this will ensure a tight miter joint in the corners. Now when you're matching old wood like this, it's best to start at one end and nail towards the other. This way you can push the board in or out as needed to keep the overhang consistent. This deck has a small gate to keep pets or children from leaving the deck. It had sagged a good bit over the years and needed additional supports in the corners that we provided using some of the 2x6 corners we had left over from our angle cuts. With all this complete, it's time to clean. The reason it's so important to really clean the old deck wood is so that when we apply our sealer later, it'll really soak into the wood. Now you can see a big difference between the old and the new here, and after we clean it, it'll look a lot more similar. And we're going to make it easy in cleaning by using a deck wash that we're going to pour into a garden pump-up sprayer. And I'll use the sprayer to really soak the wood around the perimeter of the deck first, then we'll come back with a pressure washer to blast away all the dirt and the grime. After that, we'll start working on the flat surfaces. So I'll get started here with filling this up. This cleaner contains bleach, so safety glasses are suggested. When the sprayer is filled, we pump it up and begin applying it to the rails and the benches. Check the labels on these cleaners to see if they harm plants. You'll want to avoid spraying them or just cover them up. Now once the cleaner has set for 10 to 15 minutes, Greg begins washing it off with a pressure washer. Now the pressure these units generate can be enough to really damage the wood, so be careful not to get too close or to use too fine of a spray pattern. The pressure washers tend to be more effective when the spray hits the surface at an angle and when you move it back and forth along the grain of the wood. Now it's tedious to get all the surfaces perfectly clean, especially the spindles and the rails, but you can see that any place you miss will be very obvious. The difference between the clean wood and the unclean is remarkable. When the rails are all clean, we're ready to move on to the deck itself. We apply the cleaner just as we did before, letting it sit and then begin the washing. Now for flat surfaces like this one, you can rent a deck scrubbing attachment for the pressure washer that has multiple heads spinning underneath to speed up the process. After that, a little touch up with the pressure washer. It did take a fair amount of work to get this deck this clean, but the next step is simply to let it dry. 2 to 3 days is what most manufacturers recommend before we apply our sealer coat. Now the sealer is what really is going to make this look good for a long time, and we'll look at that next, right after our simple solutions.
It's time to pick up a few tricks of the trade from Danny and home repair expert Joe Truini in this week's Simple Solution, brought to you by DuPont Tithing. Build it once, build it right.
One way to really dress up a plain looking window that has a drywall return is to add molding around it, but that can be a problem if the frame's just not square.
In fact, that's the case here, Danny, where we've nailed up the head casing, which has been cut at a perfect 45 degrees, but here you see in this sample piece, which is also cut at 45 degrees, when you line them up, you end up with a big gap. So one way to solve that problem is to take the piece of casing, set it up on the bottom of the window stool, and let it run long past the head casing. Then just line up the two corners and make a mark. So right on this outer edge, and then again on this inner edge. Right
Now see,
there.
you're keeping the same gap here as you have up
Yeah,
here.
you want the reveal to be exactly the
Okay.
same. And then all you need to do is take a sliding bevel square, like I have here, put it on there, and line up the two marks. So we have one right here and there. So we line those up.
Tell me when.
All right, you can tighten it right there.
Okay.
Now we'll make the mark, and we'll go over to the miter saw and use this to set the blade and then make the cut. Okay, after cutting the miter on the top of this piece, all you need to do is set it in place and check the joint up here. Make sure it fits pretty tight. Yeah, look at that. That's great.
That's great.
Now, if you find this piece is a little too long, rather than recutting the miter, you're better off just trimming off the square end. Now all you need to do is hold it in place, maintain that reveal, and nail it off.
Welcome back. Now it's been a few days since we completed all of the cleaning of the wood deck. Now when you clean a deck like this, it really opens up the grain of the wood, and also you may discover, like we did, a few splinters and burrs that we're going to have to take care of, especially around the seating area that's around the perimeter of the deck. Now this is the point where you really need to take care of those kind of things before you apply the sealer. A pad sander or belt sander for tougher spots will smooth out the rough places and protect you from splinters down the road. You may also use the sander to remove any markings that may be on your new wood. Once you're satisfied that your deck is dry enough, clean enough, and smooth enough, you're ready to apply the sealer. Now if you don't apply a sealer, it's not going to look very good for very long, because the grain of the wood is open and the moisture and the dirt will get back into the wood and cause it to be ugly again, and it just won't last as long as it should. Now when you're choosing a sealer or a stain for your deck, there's basically 3 different kinds. You have a solid color stain, a semi-transparent stain, and a clear sealer. Now let me show you what the differences are there. Now first of all, this one over here is a solid color. It looks very much like regular paint, all the grains kind of covered up there. Here it's a semi-transparent, so you have a little bit of the wood grain showing through. Now either one of these can be tinted to a number of different colors that you can see here that'll allow you to maybe match some of the color scheme that you have around the outside of your home. Now the homeowners here decided to go with a clear sealer. Now this almost looks like nothing is on it at all, even though the sealer has been applied 2 different coats and it has really soaked down into the pores of the wood and will protect it for a long time. Now this will also allow the beauty of the wood and the warmth of the wood to shine through, which is exactly what the homeowners wanted. Now the manufacturers have suggested several different ways of applying any of the stains or sealers. You can brush it on, roll it on, or the way we're going to do it is actually use our pump-up garden sprayer we used earlier for our cleaner that we applied to apply the clear sealer. Then we'll use a brush to back brush it. It's recommended that this product be stirred instead of shaken prior to application. Now, in the can, the sealer appears to be kind of a solid rust color, but as it dries out, it'll enhance the wood's natural color without masking it. Now, pouring the sealer into the sprayer can be messy, so it's best to use a drop cloth to keep all the spills off the deck. And when the sprayer's full and locked down, I pump it up to full pressure and begin the spraying. Now I'm spraying on the vertical surfaces around the edge of the deck so that I don't paint myself into a corner. Now Greg follows me, brushing the sealer in with a 4-inch brush. Now the brush is also good for tight spots near the wall and between all of the spindles. Now if you're working along, spray only a small area before you back brush it. If you allow the sealer to puddle in one spot for too long, the result may be an uneven look on the deck. The areas where the more sealer soaks in will appear darker. When the benches and the rails are coated, we continue the same process, spraying and back brushing all the way across the deck until everything is coated. The manufacturer recommends that you allow the sealer to dry about 5 hours before you walk on it. We let it dry overnight, and it certainly looks a lot better. Now, not only is it looking better, it's also now protected, because the water that used to go down into the pores of the wood and damage it, now just simply beads up and rolls off.
Now let's join Danny at the Home Center to check out this week's best new product, brought to you by the Home Depot.
If some of the floor covering around your home is starting to look a little rough, you may consider replacing it with carpet. Now, in the past, carpet has not been such a do-it-yourself friendly type of floor covering, but that's about to change. Now, this is a type of floor covering from Milliken Carpets called Legato. It comes in approximately a 2-foot by 2-foot square, but what makes it so easy to install is the little curvy edge that once you connect that to an adjacent piece of carpet, if these were the same color, the seam would virtually disappear. It's also very easy to install because it requires no glue or nails. That's due to the traction back glueless system that basically will you can put it right down on a smooth surface, and this can be vinyl, linoleum, even concrete or plywood. Go straight down on it. That's all that's necessary in order to install it. Also, you don't have to worry about putting any pad down because the pad is built right into each piece of Legato. Now, another thing that makes it really nice is in the event after you've installed it, if you have a very bad stain or possibly some damage to a section of the carpet, then you basically can pull one piece up, put another one down, and you're completely finished. Now, also it comes in a lot of different colors, and that you can find one that probably will suit your house very well. Another thing is you're not dealing with a large piece of carpet, so this is very easy to handle, and you can take care of putting carpet down in one half of the room, move your furniture over, do the other half, and you're not having to empty a room completely when installing this carpet. Well, our deck definitely looks a lot better and will certainly last a lot longer, but the same process will need to be repeated every 2 to 3 years in order to maintain this look. Now, if you want to avoid this kind of work on your deck over the years, there is an alternative. This deck was built using a composite decking material, which has become very popular over the last few years. And there's a lot of advantages to using a material like this. One, you don't have to worry about any warping or cupping that can take place using wood on a deck. And this material is virtually maintenance-free. Just a little bit of cleaning from time to time is all that's really needed. Also, you don't have to put any type of stain or sealer or finish on this material because it stays just like it is for many, many years with almost no fading at all. It's also available in a number of different colors, so you have a little bit of flexibility there. Another thing, because of it being a manufactured material, they're able to create different profiles. This particular profile is a tongue and groove style, so that you're actually able to attach the material to the wood members underneath using screws and hiding the screws with the adjacent board. So there's no fasteners visible anywhere on this deck. But what exactly is composite decking material?
A composite decking material is made out of a cellulose material and a polymer. Manufacturers do things differently. Most of them will use a oak or pine or maple as their wood source, and others will use as their plastic source a polypropylene, polyethylene, PVC. TimberTech does things a little differently. We use a virgin polyethylene, and we mix that with sawdust along with some other materials that bind it all together. We use virgin plastics because we want to keep color consistency and shape consistency with our product. We have some complex shapes, especially with our T&G product, and the other thing is customers want a colored product that is consistent all the way through from board to board, batch to batch, truck to truck.
Now, the composite decking material is very durable, but it's not designed to be used for structural framing, so you'll still need some type of pressure-treated or weather-resistant wood to be used for any framing of any deck that you may have. So if you're building a new house, you can just basically frame up the deck that you want with the wood that we mentioned and then put the composite decking right on top. Now, if you have an existing wood deck already and those deck boards are looking kind of bad, simply pull those deck boards off, inspect the framing to make sure it's in good shape under the original deck, then put the new composite material right over the top of it for a great look. Now, because of the popularity of this composite decking material, a lot of other components have been introduced to really finish off your deck. Here's a good example. You can see right at the bottom here, we have a skirt board that's about a 1/2 inch thick and 10 or 11 inches wide. This is perfect for skirting around and covering up the wood all the way around the perimeter of the deck. Also, many of the manufacturers have started introducing a number of different railing systems. Now, this particular one I like a lot because it looks a lot like the wood components that we've used on decks for many years. You have the square balusters here that are about 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches. You have somewhat of a standard bottom rail there, and then a nice top rail that's a little heavier, nice and sturdy, really kind of caps off the top of the railing. Also, the way they've handled the post is there's actually a 4x4 treated post inside this, and this actually encases it, slides right down over it, then your handrails attached to it on either side. And this particular deck builder actually finished it off with a little copper top on it. It's a great little accent. Overall, this deck looks really nice. If you're considering building a deck using composites or redecking an existing deck with composite materials, you need to be aware of the spacing of your joist. Now, these, you can tell by the nails, are 24 inches wide. Many manufacturers recommend 16-inch centers on the joist. So before you make your final selection, make sure you check with the manufacturer on what they require.
Let's head outside for Around the Yard with Danny and lawn and garden expert Tricia Craven-Worley. Brought to you by TimberTech Composite Decking. Less work, more life.
Tricia, I just love hostas out in the yard, but I understand slugs like them even more than I do.
Well, they do, and you can see this plant has a little bit of damage already, and they cause damage to a lot of plants in the garden.
Well, you always have some great ideas on how to rid your garden of pests like slugs. What do you have for us today?
Well, Danny, in this bed we have some pine needles, and that's a really good barrier. Another way to keep slugs off plants you don't want them to attack would be to put some crushed eggshells around them. And some people even use soot from the fireplace, and they kind of bathe themselves in that, and they don't like that. Even beer in a dish helps.
Oh, I've heard that.
But today I have another thing, and that is creating a trap.
Okay.
And we're going to create a trap with these grapefruit halves.
Okay, how do you do that?
Well, after you've enjoyed the grapefruit, you just put it out. It's not an early Halloween decoration. And what it does is it creates a dark place that the snails or slugs like to come underneath and kind of hide.
Okay, all right. What do you do then as far as leaving them out? I mean, do you leave them out for several days or what?
Well, you can leave them out kind of as long as you want, but after a day, you can take a check and probably not only snails, but also sow bugs or pill bugs and
roly-polies?
Roly-polies, these other little pill bugs come in there, and you turn it up and they're in there eating and kind of making a nest, and you know, it makes great bird chow.
One thing that's so good about home improvement projects like this is the instant gratification that you get. Not only does it look better, but it's a good peace of mind knowing that it's going to last a lot longer. Now, whether you're revitalizing your deck, building a new deck, maybe even using some of the composite materials that we looked at, the main thing is get out there and get it taken care of so that you can really enjoy your outdoor living areas. Hey, I'm glad you were with us this week. I'm Danny Lipford. These days you hear so much about decorative finishes for your walls and cabinets. Join us next week. We'll show you some great ones. Thanks for watching this episode of Today's Homeowner. And don't forget to like, comment, and hit the bell icon so that you'll be notified of new videos.
And be sure to click around and watch some more videos while you're here.